The Historical Society woman kept saying, extraordinary, while Nina's phone buzzed with another text from her landlord. 3 days overdue. The woman, Dr. Walsh, Sheets said, was photographing the brick floor of the smokehouse with hands that trembled slightly. Nina didn't understand why anyone would drive 4 hours to look at a collapsing building that reeked of rot and 100 years of smoke. This changes everything we thought we knew about the Underground Railroad in this region, Dr. Walsh said, kneeling on the dusty bricks. Everything. But that was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks earlier, Chen stared at the number on her phone screen, -$47. Overdraft fees had eaten the last of her grocery money. She sat in her car outside the Sunrise Bakery at 3:47 a.m., 13 minutes before her shift started, and calculated. If she took the extra Saturday shifts at the call center, skipped lunch 4 days this week, and the electricity bill could wait until her phone rang. Marcus. Her older brother never called this early unless something was wrong. Dad's lawyer wants us at his office today. 2 o'clock. Estate stuff. Their father had died 6 weeks ago. Heart attack in the hardware store parking lot. Quick, the doctor had said. Nina had paid for the cremation on a credit card that was now maxed out. Marcus and Jade had been too busy to help with costs. Too busy to help with anything, really. They'd gotten the scholarships, the stable careers, the lives that made sense. Nina had gotten pregnant at 19, married David, believed him when he said they'd figure it out together. Then David had figured out life was easier without a wife and toddler. He'd left when Lily was 2. That was 5 years ago. Nina had been catching up ever since. I'll be there, Nina said. Good. Because apparently Dad actually owned something worth dividing up. The lawyer's office was the fancy kind with leather chairs and abstract art. Jade arrived in a business suit, her consultant badge still clipped to her lapel. Marcus wore khakis and a button-down, teacher clothes, he called them. Nina had come straight from her bakery shift, her jeans dusted with flour, her hair still smelling of yeast. Mr. Pemberton opened a folder. Your father's estate is straightforward. The primary asset is the 40-acre property on Highway 52, the old family farmland. Current market value is approximately $840,000. Nina's breath caught. $840,000. Split 3 ways. That was. The property is to be divided as follows, Mr. Pemberton continued. To Marcus Chen, the northern 20 acres, including the main road frontage. To Jade Chen, the southern 20 acres, including the creek access. To Nina Chen, the structure known as the smokehouse and the immediate half-acre surrounding it. Silence. Wait, Jade said. The smokehouse? That death trap. Mr. Pemberton adjusted his glasses. The structure is indeed in poor condition. Your father's instructions were specific. The land is divided. Marcus and Jade receive the valuable parcels, and Nina receives a falling-down brick shed. Marcus laughed. Jesus, Dad. Even Dad, you're still disappointed in her. Nina's face burned. The smokehouse. She remembered it from childhood. A squat brick building with a sagging roof, empty except for spider webs and the ghost smell of meat that hadn't hung there in decades. The property was landlocked by Marcus and Jade's parcels, accessible only by an overgrown path. There must be a mistake, Nina said quietly. That's not equal. Your father left a note. Mr. Pemberton slid an envelope across the desk. For Nina only. Jade leaned back, already texting someone. Marcus was Googling property values, his face satisfied. Nina opened the envelope. Nina, you see things others miss. You always did. Don't let them tell you what to do with the smokehouse. Look closer. Dad, well, Marcus said. What's it say? Nothing. Nina folded the note. Just goodbye stuff. She signed the papers. Jade and Marcus were already discussing development potential, lot divisions, who'd pay for the survey. Nina walked out into the parking lot and sat in her car until her hands stopped shaking. $800,000, split into 40 acres of road frontage and creek access, and one crumbling smokehouse that probably wasn't even safe to enter. Her phone buzzed. Lily's after-school program. Reminder. Payment due for next month. $340. Nina drove to the property. She hadn't been there since Dad's funeral, hadn't wanted to see the empty farmhouse where she'd grown up. Marcus would probably bulldoze it, put up McMansions with 3-car garages. The smokehouse sat in a clearing, dark brick stained black with a century of smoke. The roof sagged in the middle. The wooden door hung crooked on rusted hinges. Nina pushed it open carefully. Inside was darkness and the smell of old fires. Brick walls rose to a peaked roof with gaps where light slanted through. The floor was brick too, in a herringbone pattern, covered in dirt and leaves. Hooks still hung from the ceiling beams where meat had once cured. Nina's phone flashlight barely cut the gloom. She walked the perimeter, looking for whatever Dad meant. Look closer. At what? Bricks? Spiderwebs? The building was empty. Worthless. Her foot caught on something. A brick that shifted under her weight. She knelt and brushed away dirt. The brick was loose. So were 3 others nearby. Nina worked them free and shone her light into the gap. The beam caught metal. A handle. She pulled, and a section of floor lifted. Not bricks, but a wooden panel covered in brick facing. Below was darkness and a ladder leading down. Nina sat back hard. A basement? An old root cellar? She checked her phone. 20 minutes until she had to pick up Lily. But she climbed down anyway, her heart hammering. The space below was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet. Brick walls, dirt floor, and scratched into every inch of the walls. Names. Hundreds of names, carved into the brick with desperate care. Sarah, Thomas, Mary and Joseph. Freedom. Nina's breath stopped. She touched the wall, traced letters worn smooth by time. This wasn't a root cellar. This was a station on the Underground Railroad. Nina called Dr. Walsh from the parking lot of Lily's school, her hands still shaking. The woman had answered on the first ring, listened to Nina's breathless explanation, and said, "Don't tell anyone else. I'm coming tomorrow." That night, Nina lay awake in the studio apartment she shared with Lily, listening to her daughter's breathing and trying to make the discovery mean something practical. A historical site was interesting, maybe even important, but it wouldn't pay rent. It wouldn't fix her car's dying transmission. It wouldn't erase the $47,000 in debt David had left her with when he'd cleaned out their account and vanished. Dr. Walsh arrived at noon with a graduate student, camera equipment, and an intensity that made the air feel charged. She photographed every name on the walls, measured the space, examined the ladder and the hidden door mechanism. "This changes the entire historical record," she said, her voice hushed. "We knew the network extended through this region, but we had no physical evidence. No confirmed stations. Nina, do you understand what this means? That my dad left me something historically significant, but financially worthless?" Nina hadn't meant to sound bitter. Dr. Walsh looked up from her camera. "How much do you know about heritage grants? Museum acquisitions? National Historic Landmark status?" "Nothing." "Then let me explain." Dr. Walsh climbed the ladder, and Nina followed her back into the smokehouse. This site could qualify for federal preservation funding. Universities would pay for excavation rights. Documentary filmmakers would license access. And Nina, she paused. There are collectors who pay extraordinary amounts for authenticated Underground Railroad artifacts. Extraordinary. But there aren't any artifacts. Just names on walls. Keep looking. They searched for 3 hours while the graduate student documented everything. Nina ran her hands along walls, checking for more hidden panels. She was about to give up when her fingers caught on something. A brick that moved differently from the others. Not up, but sideways. It slid out like a drawer. Behind it was a cavity in the wall, and inside the cavity was a bundle wrapped in oilcloth, preserved against time and moisture. Nina lifted it carefully. Heavy. The cloth crackled as she unwrapped it. Letters. Dozens of them, written on paper so old it was nearly transparent. Nina touched one carefully. "My dearest Catherine, I have crossed and am safe. The friends are true. Trust the smokehouse keeper. Come when you can. All my love, Samuel." March 1851. "Oh my God," Dr. Walsh whispered. "These are conductor letters. Communication between station keepers. Nina, these are museum-quality documents. They prove the network, the routes, the people involved." She was already pulling on archival gloves, handling the letters like they might disintegrate. "We need to get these to a conservator immediately, and we need to see what else is here." They found 3 more hidden compartments. Each contained bundles wrapped in oilcloth. Letters, a ledger with names and dates, a hand-drawn map showing routes through 3 states, and in the last cavity, something that made Dr. Walsh actually gasp, a leather journal. Property of Ezra Whitfield, station master, 1847 to 1862. Dr. Walsh's hands shook as she opened it. The pages were covered in cramped handwriting, records of people who'd passed through, supplies needed, coded messages about safe houses and patrol routes. "This is a primary source document from a confirmed station master," she said. "There are maybe a dozen of these known to exist. Scholars have been searching for evidence of Whitfield Station for 70 years. She looked at Nina. "You just found it. If you want to know what this discovery means for Nina's future, subscribe now, because the valuation will shock you." The graduate student drove the documents to a university conservation facility while Dr. Walsh made phone calls. Nina sat in the smokehouse, alone, trying to understand what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. "Marcus, Jade and I are getting the survey done next week. Surveyors need access across her parcel. Don't be difficult." She didn't respond. Dr. Walsh came back at sunset with a man in an expensive suit, Richard Moss from the National Underground Railroad Museum. He photographed everything with the reverence people usually reserve for cathedrals. Then he sat on the smokehouse's front step and said, "Ms. Chen, I'm prepared to make you an offer." "For what?" "The structure, the half-acre, and acquisition rights to all documents and artifacts found on site. The museum board has authorized me to offer $2.4 million. Nina's vision blurred. That can't be. The documents alone are worth over $1 million in scholarly value. The site itself, with National Historic Landmark status, becomes a destination. We'd preserve everything, create a visitor's center, establish an educational program." He pulled out a folder. "This is a preliminary offer. If authentication confirms what Dr. Walsh believes, the figure could go higher." Nina's phone buzzed again. "Lily's program. Final notice. Payment required by Friday or enrollment will be terminated." "I need to think," Nina managed. "Of course. But Ms. Chen, there are private collectors who would pay more for these documents and then lock them away forever. You have something that belongs to history. I hope you'll let us share it with the world." That night, Nina told Lily about the smokehouse, the hidden room, the names on the walls. Lily listened with wide eyes, then said, "So great-grandpa's house had secret passages? Like a spy movie?" "Kind of. For people escaping to freedom." "That's better than a spy movie." Lily paused. "Mom, are we still going to have to move?" Nina looked at the eviction notice on the counter. "Final warning, 10 days to vacate." "No, baby. I don't think we're going to have to move anymore." She called Dr. Walsh. "I want to keep searching. There could be more." "I was hoping you'd say that. I'm bringing a team tomorrow." The team arrived with ground-penetrating radar, archival equipment, and a security guard. They worked for 4 days, documenting everything. They found 2 more hidden compartments. One contained currency, bills and coins from the 1850s, kept as emergency funds for escaping families. The other held something that made the team go silent, a Bible with notes in the margins. "Conducted to safety, 847 souls. May God forgive what we had to do. May the world remember what they survived." Ezra Whitfield, December 1862. 847 people. Through the station. Through this smokehouse that Marcus had laughed at. Dr. Walsh's voice was thick with emotion. "Nina, you're not just preserving history. You're giving voice to 847 people whose survival was never officially recorded. Their descendants will finally know their ancestors' stories." On the 5th day, they found the final compartment. It was larger than the others, hidden beneath a false section of floor. Inside were bundles of documents, freedom papers, manumission letters, birth certificates. Official papers that proved free status, carried by people who'd bought their freedom or been freed by owners' wills. Left here, perhaps, by people who'd needed to travel lighter or who hadn't survived the journey north. Richard Moss examined them with tears in his eyes. These prove legal identity for families whose records were lost. Genealogists have been trying to trace these lines for generations. He looked at Nina. "I need to revise my offer. $8.3 million for the site and full acquisition rights." Nina's knees went weak. $8,300,000. "There's more," Dr. Walsh said. "We've had inquiries from 4 other institutions. And Nina, the Smithsonian wants to include this in their permanent collection. They're prepared to match any offer and establish a research fellowship in your father's name." The number climbed over 3 days of negotiations. The Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American History, university research grants, documentary licensing, educational program development. When the final contracts were signed, Mina owned the building and half-acre. The museum consortium purchased access rights, artifact acquisition, and long-term preservation responsibility for $12.7 million. But the documents themselves, authenticated, conserved, and designated as cultural treasures, were valued at $326.3 million for insurance and scholarly purposes. Mina's actual payout, $12.7 million in acquisition fees, plus ongoing royalties for educational use, plus a $50,000 annual stipend as site liaison. She called Marcus from the museum's office. "I'm signing papers today. For the smokehouse. Finally getting rid of that dump? Good. How much did the salvage company pay for the bricks?" "Nothing. I'm donating it to the National Underground Railroad Museum. It's a confirmed station. They're paying $12.7 million for access and preservation rights." Silence. "Then, that's not possible. The documents found on site are worth over $300 million in cultural value. I'm keeping a percentage." "Oh, and Marcus? The museum needs vehicular access across the property. I told them you'd be happy to grant an easement." She hung up before he could respond. The news coverage started within 48 hours. Major Underground Railroad discovery in rural Kentucky. Lost station found after 160 years. Documents worth hundreds of millions discovered in abandoned smokehouse. Mina's photo was on the front page of 3 major papers. Not the glamorous shot she'd never been able to afford, but a grainy image of her standing in the smokehouse doorway, sunlight streaming through the gaps in the roof. Marcus called 6 times. She didn't answer. Jade sent a long email explaining why the estate should be renegotiated, how Dad clearly wasn't in his right mind, how families should share equally. Mina deleted it without responding. She was done explaining herself to people who'd written her off. The morning of the press conference, Mina stood in front of the bathroom mirror in a hotel suite the museum had booked. The suit she wore actually fit. Her hair was professionally styled. Lily sat on the bed watching cartoons, eating room service pancakes that cost more than Mina used to spend on groceries in a week. "You look like a movie star, Mom," Lily said. "I look like someone trying not to throw up." But she walked into that conference room anyway. Dr. Walsh stood at the podium, explaining the historical significance. Richard Moss showed slides of the documents, the names on the walls, the map that proved a network stretching from Kentucky to Canada. And then they asked Mina to speak. She stepped to the microphone. Cameras flashed. Reporters waited. "My father left me a smokehouse," Mina said. "My siblings got the valuable land. I got a crumbling building that everyone laughed at. But my father wrote me a note. He said to look closer. He knew I'd been overlooked my whole life, dismissed as the daughter who made mistakes, who married wrong, who couldn't get her life together. He knew I understood what it meant to be invisible." She paused, gathering courage. 847 people passed through that smokehouse on their way to freedom. Station keepers risked everything to help them. Those people were invisible too, not counted, not recorded, not believed to matter. My father knew I'd honor their story, that I'd understand the value of what others dismissed. She pulled out her father's note and read it aloud. "You see things others miss. You always did. Don't let them tell you what to do with the smokehouse. Look closer." So I looked closer, and I found a story that needed to be told. That's what this discovery is, not about money, but about making the invisible visible, about giving voice to people who survived impossible odds, about proving that what the world dismisses might be the most valuable thing of all. The applause was thunderous. Questions flew. Mina answered them calmly, confidently, the way she'd learned to speak when talking to landlords and creditors, and people who assumed single mothers were stupid. After the conference, Marcus was waiting in the lobby. He looked smaller somehow, deflated. "Mina, we need to talk about." "No, we don't." She kept walking toward the elevator. "Dad should have divided things equally. You know that's not fair." Mina turned. "You're right. It's not fair that you got scholarships while I worked full-time to help pay your rent. It's not fair that Jade got family loans for grad school while I was told to figure it out myself. It's not fair that when David left me with a toddler and $47,000 in debt, you both said I'd made my bed. So no, Marcus, things aren't fair. But this time, the unfairness works in my favor." She got in the elevator. The doors closed on his stunned face. 3 months later, Mina stood in the new apartment, the real apartment, with 2 bedrooms and windows that didn't stick and a kitchen where more than one person could stand at a time. Lily's room had bookshelves full of new books, a desk for homework, and a bed with a frame instead of a mattress on the floor. The museum had officially opened the site. Mina had been there for the ribbon cutting, had watched visitors walk through the smokehouse reading the names on the walls. There was a plaque now, the Whitfield Station, preserved thanks to the Chen family gift. 847 souls passed through to freedom here. She'd paid off every debt. Medical bills, credit cards, the loan she'd taken for Dad's cremation. The number in her checking account had so many zeros she still couldn't quite believe it was real. But the money wasn't the part that mattered. Mina had established the Ezra Whitfield Scholarship Fund, full college tuition for single mothers. She'd bought the bakery where she'd worked, raised wages, added health insurance. She'd donated to literacy programs and women's shelters and every organization that helped people who'd been dismissed as worthless. And she'd kept the smokehouse key. She visited every Sunday, walking through the space where people had hidden and hoped and survived. Their names were protected now behind climate-controlled glass, but Mina could still touch the walls, still feel the history humming in the bricks. Her phone buzzed. Dr. Walsh, new discovery. Letters mention another station 50 miles north. Would you consult on the excavation? Mina smiled. I'd be honored. She locked the smokehouse and walked to her car. The new car, the one that didn't make grinding noises or threaten to die at every stoplight. But she sat there for a moment, looking at the building Dad had left her. The worthless inheritance that everyone had mocked. A car pulled up behind her. Jade got out, expensive sunglasses hiding her eyes. Mina, I'm glad I caught you. What do you want, Jade? I wanted to apologize. For how I reacted. For how we treated you. Jade's voice cracked. You were right. We did leave you alone when David left. We did act like you were the family embarrassment. And I'm sorry. Mina studied her sister. The apology sounded genuine. It probably was. But some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt. I appreciate that, Mina said. But I'm not interested in reconnecting. You and Marcus got what you wanted from Dad's estate. I got what I needed. The money. This isn't about money. It's about being seen, being valued. Dad saw me when no one else did. He knew I'd understand what really mattered. Mina opened her car door. You can visit the museum site anytime. It's open to the public. But Jade, don't contact me again. She drove away without looking back. That evening, Mina and Lily had dinner at a restaurant with cloth napkins and a menu without prices. They ordered dessert without checking the cost. Lily talked about her new school, her friends, the college fund that meant she could study anything she wanted without drowning in debt. Mom, Lily said over chocolate cake, why did great-grandpa leave you the smokehouse? Why not something easy like money? Mina thought about that. About her father who'd worked hardware his whole life, who'd always been quiet around her siblings, but who'd listened when Mina talked, who'd never said anything when she got pregnant at 19 or when David left, just helped her move into the tiny apartment and told her, you're stronger than they think. Because he knew I'd see what others missed, Mina said. He knew I wouldn't just tear it down or ignore it. He knew I'd look closer, like the people on the walls. Everyone missed them too. Exactly like that. Mina squeezed her daughter's hand. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones the world tries to pretend don't exist. They walked home through streets that felt safer now, past coffee shops and bookstores that Mina could actually afford to enter. The city lights reflected off windows, making everything glow gold. Mina's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Miss Chen, this is Dr. Patricia Coleman at Howard University. Dr. Walsh suggested I contact you. We're researching stations in Virginia and could use your expertise. Would you be available for consultation? Mina typed back, yes. Send details. She was a consultant now, an expert, a woman whose opinion mattered. The daughter who'd been dismissed, who'd gotten the worthless inheritance, who'd been invisible for so long she'd almost believed she deserved it. But her father had seen her, and in seeing her, he'd taught her to see what others missed. At home, Mina hung her father's note above her desk, framed in museum-quality glass. You see things others miss. You always did. Don't let them tell you what to do with the smokehouse. Look closer. She looked closer, and in that crumbling building everyone had mocked, she found not just history or money, but proof that being overlooked didn't mean being worthless. That patient attention revealed value the world was too hasty to see. That women like her, dismissed, divorced, exhausted, could build something that mattered from what others called junk. Nina turned off the light and checked on Lily, safe, warm, sleeping in a real bed in a real room. Outside, the city hummed with possibility. Inside, her life finally felt like it fit. The smokehouse was empty now, its treasures shared with the world. But its lesson remained. Look closer. Trust yourself. Don't let them tell you what's valuable. Because sometimes the inheritance everyone mocks turns out to be exactly what you needed all along.